the Whole Healing Podcast. Healing through nutrition by connecting your mind, body, and food.
How do you guys feel about talking about adaptogens today?
I can do adaptogens. I'm not
Really? Yeah.
super knowledgeable on it, but I think it'd be really interesting to talk about.
What do you know about adaptogens, just coming from like an intern, like non-dietitian perspective?
Well, I know that they help reduce sensitivity to stress, and I know a lot of people will take them for those reasons. I can name maybe a couple, but the science behind it, I could not tell you.
Ooh, yeah, interesting. Jack, do you know anything about the science behind adaptogens? Talk to us about the mechanism.
Yeah, sure. They are truly, I think, in a complete category on their own, adaptogens. They have a non-specific targeting mechanism, which makes them unique, right? A lot of drugs and even some herbs, like how they can target a very specific pathway in the body. And adaptogens essentially help your body adapt to physiological and psychological stressors. Now, when we look at some common mechanisms of action, especially with rhodiola and ashwagandha, schisandra berry is another one. They tend to act on the HPA axis, so the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
No way.
Yeah. And so, I mean, anytime we're talking a lot about stress or mood, usually the HPA axis is involved, right? And so they do that. So that's one, which, yeah, again, that whole region of the brain runs so much of our stress and our mood. Okay. And then
Jack,
yeah.
just so our listeners know, because I don't think anybody knows what the HPA axis is. And I think that it's probably one of the most important things that everybody should know about. Rileigh, do you know what the HPA axis is? You don't? Okay. So just for point of reference. So HPA axis stands for hypothalamal pituitary axis, right? And so we have our pituitary gland that's in the center of our brain. And that is what regulates cortisol release. And our hypothalamus is in the back of our brain, right? That's our hypothalamus. And so what happens is when we go through anything stressful, right? Like when we drink coffee in the morning, first thing, when we go to work and have something stressful there happen, when we come home and have something stressful with our family, or when we're driving and we're in traffic, when we're exercising, right? Exercise is a stressor. All these things. What happens is our body, our pituitary gland sends out signals to our body to release cortisol, and our adrenal system releases cortisol. And what that does is it down regulates our, it puts us into fight or flight. So what that means is our fight or flight stress response down regulates our hydrochloric acid in our stomach, because we don't want to be digesting when we're running away from a bear, right? Our fight or flight mode is so primitive, and it doesn't know the difference between running away from a bear or a saber-toothed tiger or a mountain lion, or being stressed in traffic. It's the same response. And so when we're going through that experience of fight or flight, the last thing we want to do is think, oh, gee, I'm hungry. And so our entire digestive system is slowed down, really comes to a screeching halt. And so we can't digest food. We can't break down food. Our hydrochloric acid in our stomach goes down. And so then if we're in that chronic state, and then now all of a sudden we're trying to eat food, it doesn't work for us. Right? We get indigestion, we get bloating, we get all these things. So Jack, what you're saying is these adaptogens help to regulate this axis so that we don't go through these fight or flight responses in our gut and in our digestion and in our entire system. Is that right?
I would absolutely agree with that. Yep. I think essentially hormone balance is what's going on, but specifically that's where it's playing a big role. Cortisol, yes, that's a massive component. It's how we often measure stress. It's not perfect, but it can help. And then it also acts on serotonergic receptors, so serotonin as well. And that's why we tend to see some benefits with that, with adaptogens. I think ultimately, if someone is interested in reducing stress and anxiety and wants to explore adaptogens, there's just a few key things to know about. It's not going to be an antidepressant where you immediately can have some specific receptor going on in the body. You can feel something pretty quick. But adaptogens happen over time. So they really work best when you are consistently taking them, a high quality version of them, because not all herbal supplements are created equal, over at least a month. So that's what we've seen in the research. You need to take it at least for a month for you to then to really find the peace and the balance in the body. So it's not going to be like an immediate boom. I'm like, all is cured. But if you trust that, right, it has like an accumulation effect in the body. And some are a little bit different. So right, it's again, adaptogen is a pretty big umbrella term. So like rhodiola has just a little bit more of a stimulating effect, a little bit more energizing, something that's probably you can take a little bit earlier in the day. Some with ashwagandha, a little bit more of a relaxing effect due to the withanolides and other bioactive compounds in there. So that's that's something a little bit for the evening. So you can play around with or talk to a professional, right, about specific ones that may be best for you, even within the world of reducing stress and all that. So those are the big ones. I mean, mushrooms can certainly be. Some mushrooms can be considered adaptogens. What am I missing? What is?
I honestly love Eleuthero. And
Oh.
I'll be so upfront and honest. Like what I've learned in like pursuits of becoming an herbalist is there's teas, tinctures, and capsules, right? And tinctures are going to be the most potent. Teas are the least. Capsules are kind of in the middle. I absolutely love Nootropics Depot. Like I will tout them forever. I also because they're like my favorite capsule form. I love Herb Farm for their tinctures. Herb Farm, PH Farm is amazing for their tinctures, and you can just get them at Sprouts. They're so easy. And then you just I do 2 or 3 dropper full in a glass of water. And I drink it throughout the day, and I do it 2 to 3 times a day.
Yeah, really concentrated, right? So you don't want to do a whole ton. Yeah.
No, well, and dosages, I mean, everything's about that. In fact, you've been getting a ton of comments on your YouTube channel actually about like this new food and sex. Like, oh my gosh, that one hit. And everybody keeps saying, oh, like I took this herb and it didn't work for me. And it's like, well, how much did you take and what form did you take it and how long did you take it? Because like people think it's going to be like Tylenol where they feel the effects instantly, and herbs just aren't like that. You have to be consistent with it and you have to really dive into it. And some people are willing and some people aren't to do that. So I think it's different for everybody, but that's my opinion on herbs. I agree with you. Mushrooms can be great. I love mushrooms for their effects. Reishi, and chaga, turkey tail. Like there's so many, lion's mane. Oh my gosh, so many different mushrooms. Emily, what are some good adaptogens for women especially for like cycling?
Yes, yeah. So ginseng is actually one that's been very much researched and really, really strong for a wide range too of hormonal fluctuations, from more menopausal, so like the hot flashes, insomnia, night sweats, things like that. And then also from like a PMS standpoint, so like helping with your cycle, helping with cramping, irregularities, inflammation. So ginseng, same thing, varies in the dosage too. Typically, I think it's the root form that's really well absorbed. So if you can get that ground up in a tea, or then again, the extract would be wonderful. And I think with any type of adaptogen and any type of herb that we're looking at is really what works for your body. Because I think we had talked about this one time with ashwagandha, for example, how it's known to have a really relaxing effect. But Jenna, didn't you find it to be a little bit more focused, a little bit more concentrating and stimulating for you?
Which one was it?
Ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha. Well, ashwagandha like puts me on my butt. Like when I take it in the evenings, when I take it during the day, I just get agitated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I find that there's a lot, especially with ashwagandha, they're putting it in coffees now, or like caffeine supplements now, or alternatives, I think is a better word for it. They're putting it in like very morning based beverages, which I had the same effect with ashwagandha. If I take it, I am ready to fall asleep. So I think really finding what dose works for you and what combination too, right? Are we doing one adaptogen? Are there a few? Because I know, for example, Four Sigmatic. Have you guys heard of that brand?
Yeah.
They do a lot of like coffee alternatives, and now they're combining like lion's mane and turkey tail and chaga and ashwagandha. And so what's the combination together that would affect you too.
Right. That makes a big difference. You're
It
so right.
really does. But from like a women's health standpoint, I think ginseng is one that you can really look at. And I like it too because some of these adaptogens and herbs are really strong. And so some women come to me and they're not really sure the root of their hormonal irregularities or symptoms. And so if we're putting an adaptogen on, it might actually make things a little bit worse because it's targeting, like Jack had kind of talked about, the mechanisms. So something with herbs and adaptogens that I really look at closely is what other medications you're on, what symptoms are you actually having, the severity, the duration of your symptoms, and then are you on estrogen or progesterone? Are we on any other artificial hormones that
Yeah.
could influence that mechanism as well? So I think with women's health, it's a lot of nuances built in there, but they're so strong and so powerful when you find that combination for you.
Yeah, I know we got to get going, but I'll say this. You know, when I found Eleuthero and cordyceps are like a parasitic fungus, kind of like mushrooms, but not. I did the two together, right? Pairings and combinations and herbs and supplements is so fascinating to me. And I felt like I was going to take over the world. Like I literally drove down to Manitou Springs, wrote a blog on B vitamins, like put affiliate links in it, and then went and hiked the Manitou Incline at like 9 o'clock at night because I was so energized and on it and like just on fire, right? Like it was crazy. And what I think happened to me is I used that in combination with caffeine, and because I didn't feel the hyperstimulating effects of caffeine because I was taking the adaptogen, which was the Eleuthero, I just kept going and going and going and going and going. And the problem with that is if like you don't have a natural stress response to like tell your body, hey, it's time to rest, and you just keep going and going, that's when adrenal fatigue happens. And that's totally what happened to me. Like I just went into adrenal blowout. So you have to take these things with a grain of salt and you have to be responsible with them, right? It's the same thing with an athlete, right? Who's drinking caffeine and then going up and lifting, right? Because if they don't have their natural, fatigue response, you can get injured. So you have to really understand that these things are so potent, and use them responsibly, which is why working with a dietitian, like Jack said, is the best way to do it. And cycling things too, right? Like you can't take Eleuthero and caffeine every single day for the rest of your life. Like you have to do it in phases. So thanks guys for the great info. I think this is a great idea for a topic.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you brought this